The heavy oak door of Femi's mansion closed with a soft, expensive click, sealing Nana out of his life for a second time. But this time, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the sound of heartbreak, it was the sound of a settled account. He walked back into the cavernous living room, the scent of Nana's desperation faintly mingling with the vanilla air freshener. He was not triumphant. He felt a strange emptiness, the hollow ache of a scar that has long since healed but still remembers the wound. This act of charity wasn't for her, he realized, but for the boy he used to be, the boy who stood on Third Mainland Bridge, believing his story was over. By giving Nana a new beginning, he was finally closing the preface to his own. He found his fiancée, Amara, by the poolside, sketching in her notepad. She was an architect, a woman who built things with the same quiet determination Femi used to build code. Her beauty wasn't loud like Nana's had been. It was serene, grounded in an intelligence that shone from her eyes. She looked up as he approached, her smile gentle. "You're quiet," she observed, setting her pencil down. "Everything okay?" Femi sat beside her, the cool evening air a welcome balm. He had called her earlier, telling her a condensed, clinical version of the events. He'd run into an old acquaintance who had fallen on hard times and he had helped her. He had omitted the name. He had omitted the history. "Just a long day," he said, the lie tasting like ash. He hated keeping anything from her. Their relationship was built on a foundation of absolute transparency, a direct response to the deceit that had defined his past. Amara took his hand, her fingers lacing through his. "You seem troubled, Femi. Is it this old acquaintance?" He looked into her eyes, deep pools of unwavering trust, and the guilt was immediate. "Her name is Nana," he confessed, the name feeling heavy and foreign in this new life. She was the woman from before you." Amara's expression didn't change, but he felt a subtle stiffening in her posture. She knew the story. He had told her everything months into their relationship, needing her to understand the foundation upon which he had rebuilt himself. He had told her about the poverty, the betrayal, and the humiliating proposal at the mall. "I see," she said softly. "Is she okay?" She was homeless, begging, with 2 children. He watched her face for any sign of jealousy or anger, but found only a deep, unsettling empathy. "Those poor babies," Amara whispered, her heart going immediately to the children. "And what did you do?" "I gave her a place to stay, paid a year's rent on an apartment, and some money to start a business." Amara nodded slowly, processing it all. "You did a good thing, Femi. You showed her the man you are, not the boy she broke." She squeezed his hand, a silent affirmation of her support. But as she turned her gaze back towards the shimmering water of the pool, a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. It was the quiet wisdom of a woman who understood that while a chapter might be closed, the book remained open, and ghosts had a nasty habit of learning how to turn pages. For Nana, The first few days in the new apartment were a disorienting blend of profound relief and suffocating shame. The silence was the most jarring part. There were no insults from a frustrated landlord, no cries from a hungry neighbor's child through thin walls, no sound of her own stomach growling in the dark. There was only the gentle hum of the new refrigerator Femi's generosity had provided and the soft breathing of her twins, asleep in a real bed for the first time in their lives. She would wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, expecting the cold pavement beneath her, only to feel the crisp, clean sheets. She spent the first 2 days just existing. She bathed the twins 3 times a day, scrubbing away the memory of the streets. She cooked elaborate meals, jollof rice, fried plantain egusi soup, watching with a lump in her throat as her children ate until their bellies were round and full. The $10,000 Femi had given her sat in the envelope inside her handbag, a heavy, terrifying symbol of her second chance. It felt like more money than she had ever seen, yet she knew how quickly it could vanish if she wasn't careful. On the 3rd day, she forced herself to act. She left the twins with a trusted neighbor, a kind elderly woman, and took a bus to the local market. The noise, the smells, the vibrant chaos, it was all familiar, but she saw it through new eyes. This was not just a market, it was a universe of opportunities. She saw the woman selling fabrics, the foodstuff seller, the cosmetics dealer. She remembered her own mother's small stall, a memory she had long suppressed. Maybe she could start a small catering business. People always needed food. She bought a notebook and a pen and spent the afternoon sitting in a small buka, jotting down ideas, calculating costs. For the first time in years, a fragile tendril of hope began to unfurl within her. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could build a life, a real one, for her children. That evening, as she tucked the twins into bed, she felt a surge of determination. She would not waste this opportunity. She would prove to Femi, no, she would prove to herself, that she was more than the sum of her mistakes. But as she lay in the dark, the image of his mansion, of Amara's serene face by the pool, crept into her mind. The gratitude in her heart wrestled with a bitter poison, envy. It was a potent, familiar feeling, and she knew with a dreadful certainty that her fight was not just to build a business, but to silence the ghost of the woman she used to be. Femi tried to compartmentalize. He dove into work, overseeing the final stages of a blockchain platform his company was developing. He spent his evenings with Amara, discussing architectural designs for their future home, a project she was passionately leading. He tried to push the image of Nana, destitute and broken, to the back of his mind. But it lingered. He found himself checking his phone, half expecting a call from her, a plea for more help, or perhaps a message of thanks. None came. The silence was unnerving. A week after he had dropped her off, he was driving home from a late meeting when he took a detour, an unconscious pull guiding his hands on the steering wheel. He found himself on her street. He didn't stop, just slowed the car, looking up at the window of her apartment. A light was on. A simple, domestic glow in the dark. He saw a silhouette move past the curtain, hers. He felt a strange pang, a mixture of relief that she was okay and an unwelcome sense of connection. He sped away, angry with himself. He had drawn a line. Why did his feet keep wanting to walk back toward it? Meanwhile, Nana's initial burst of motivation was beginning to face the harsh realities of starting from scratch. She had decided on a small-scale food delivery service, targeting local offices. She spent a chunk of the money on high-quality cooking equipment and flyers. But finding customers was harder than she'd imagined. Receptionists turned her away. Businesses already had their trusted food vendors. After a week of trying, she had only secured 3 regular lunch orders. It was a start, but a painfully slow one. One afternoon, defeated after another round of rejections, she sat in her kitchen, the smell of unsold stew heavy in the air. The loneliness was a physical presence. She missed having someone to talk to, someone to share her small victories and crushing defeats with. Her pride warred with her desperation. She shouldn't call him. He had made it clear they were done. But his voice, his calm authority, was all she could think of. He would know what to do. Finally, she gave in. She found his number, her thumb hovering over the call button. She wouldn't ask for money, she told herself. Just advice. A business question. That was all. When he answered, his voice was professional, distant. Hello? Femi? It's Nana. There was a pause. Is everything all right? He asked, his tone guarded. Yes, everything is fine. The apartment is wonderful. The twins are happy. I just had a question. About business. You're so good at it, and I'm struggling a bit to get my food business off the ground. I was just wondering if you had any advice on marketing. The question was innocent, but the subtext was clear. She was re-establishing contact, testing the boundary he had set. Femi leaned back in his leather office chair, the skyline of Lagos glittering behind him. He could hear the vulnerability in her voice, a calculated echo of the woman he once tried to save. He should have ended the call, referred her to a business consultant. But he didn't. Okay, he heard himself say, tell me what you've done so far. And with those words, a door he had firmly closed was nudged open, just a crack. The phone call became a weekly occurrence. It always started with a business question, Nana's voice filled with a student's earnestness. She would ask about registering her business, creating a social media page, managing finances. Femi, ever the problem solver, would offer practical, detached advice. He justified it to himself as mentorship, a final act of charity to ensure the money he gave her wasn't wasted. He never told Amara about the calls. It wasn't a secret, he reasoned. It was just irrelevant information. A loose end he was helping to tie up. But the calls subtly changed. Nana's business started to pick up, thanks in large part to his advice. Her gratitude became more personal. She would end the calls with, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Femi," or she'd send him pictures of the twins eating the food her business had paid for with the caption, "Look at the life you gave us." Each message was a small, calculated tug on the threads of his past. The situation came to a head during the launch event for his new crypto platform Naira Chain. The event was held at a high-end hotel, a glittering affair attended by investors, tech giants, and the Lagos elite. Amara was by his side, stunning in a sapphire blue dress, a picture of grace and success. Femi was at the podium, delivering the keynote speech, when he saw her. Nana. She was standing near the back of the ballroom, by the entrance. She wasn't dressed like a beggar anymore. She wore a simple but elegant black dress that hugged her figure. Her hair was styled, her makeup subtle but perfect. She looked like she belonged there. She had used his money not just for cooking pots and flyers, but to rebuild the image of the woman he had once fallen for. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a split second, Femi's confident speech faltered. He finished his presentation on autopilot, his mind racing. How did she get in? How did she even know about this? After the applause died down, Amara hugged him, her eyes shining with pride. "You were brilliant," she said, but her smile faded slightly as she followed his gaze toward the back of the room. "Who is that? She's been staring at you this whole time." Before Femi could answer, Nana began to walk toward them, a polite, almost demure smile on her face. She moved with a newfound confidence, a phoenix rising from the ashes he had provided. Panic coiled in Femi's gut. This was his world. Amara's world. A world Nana had no place in. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes fixed on Femi, deliberately ignoring Amara for a moment too long. "Congratulations, Femi," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I always knew you were a genius." She then turned her gaze to Amara, her smile widening slightly. "You must be Amara. Femi has told me so little about you." Amara was not a fool. The way Nana said so little was a masterclass in subtle warfare, a sentence designed to plant a seed of doubt. Amara met her gaze, her own expression a calm, unreadable mask. She extended a hand. "It's lovely to finally meet the woman Femi has been so generously mentoring," she said, her tone polite but laced with steel. The word mentoring was chosen with surgical precision, defining the relationship, putting Nana firmly in her place as a charity case, not a peer. The tension between the two women was a silent, crackling thing. Nana's smile tightened at the edges. She had expected to unsettle Amara, to see a flicker of insecurity. Instead, she was met with a poise she couldn't penetrate. Femi quickly stepped in, his voice tight with frustration. "Nana, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to support you," she said, playing the part of a grateful friend. I saw the event online. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished." Her eyes were wide, innocent, but Femi saw the manipulation clear as day. This was a power play, a test to see if she could breach the walls of his new life. The encounter was brief, but the damage was done. After Nana made her excuses and melted back into the crowd, the celebratory mood had evaporated for Femi and Amara. On the drive home, the silence in the Mercedes was heavy. "Why didn't you tell me you were still talking to her, Femi?" Amara finally asked, her voice quiet, devoid of accusation but heavy with hurt. "They were just business calls," he defended, hating how weak it sounded. She was struggling. "I was just giving advice. I didn't think it was important." "Not important?" Amara turned to him, her eyes searching his face in the intermittent glow of the streetlights. "The woman who publicly humiliated you, the ghost you told me you had to exorcise to be able to love again, is calling you every week and showing up at your launch party, and you didn't think it was important to tell me?" "I was handling it," he insisted. "No," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You were hiding it. Femi, I trust you. But I don't trust her. She doesn't look at you with gratitude. She looks at you with regret, and a woman's regret can be more dangerous than her ambition. She doesn't want your help. She wants your life. My life." The truth of her words hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had been naive, believing his charity was a one-time transaction. He saw now that for Nana, it was an open invitation. He had forgiven her for the past, but he had grossly underestimated her intentions for the future. That night, for the first time in their relationship, an invisible wall stood between him and Amara, and Femi knew with chilling certainty that Nana had laid the first brick. Nana left the launch party feeling both defeated and emboldened. Amara's composure had been a setback. She was a more formidable opponent than Nana had anticipated. But seeing the flicker of panic in Femi's eyes, seeing the subtle shift in the atmosphere when she approached, had been a victory. She had proven she could still affect him. She could still disrupt his perfect world. Her strategy shifted. Pity and gratitude were not enough. To truly compete with a woman like Amara, she needed to remind Femi not of the beggar he saved, but of the woman he had once been willing to kneel for. She invested more of his money into her appearance. She bought new clothes, not flashy, but stylish and sophisticated. She got a new hairstyle, frequented a high-end gym, and started posting curated images of her life on Instagram. Pictures of her looking radiant in a bustling market, professionally plated dishes from her catering business, and poignant, artful shots of her twins with captions about a mother's strength and second chances. She never mentioned Femi, but the narrative was clear. She was a woman remaking herself, a beautiful, resilient single mother. She knew Femi would see it. She knew he wouldn't be able to resist looking. Her next move was more direct. She researched Femi's habits, remembering his love for a particular quiet cafe in Ikoyi where he often went on Saturday mornings to read and decompress. 2 weeks later, she walked into that exact cafe. She feigned surprise when she spotted him in a corner booth. "Femi. What a small world," she said, her voice a perfect blend of warmth and surprise. He looked up from his tablet, his expression wary. She looked stunning. The worn-out woman from the roadside was gone, replaced by someone who radiated confidence and style. "Nana," he said, his tone flat. "I was just in the area for a delivery. My business is doing so well, thanks to you," she said, gesturing vaguely with her handbag. "Can I join you for a minute? I promise I won't bite." Reluctantly, he gestured to the seat opposite him. She slid into the booth, her perfume, a scent he faintly remembered, drifting across the table. She didn't talk about business. Instead, she reminisced. She spoke of their university days, of the silly jokes they shared, of the dreams they once had. She skillfully painted a picture of a shared history, a bond that predated Amara and his wealth. "Do you remember that time we were caught in the rain near the lagoon and we shared that one small meat pie?" she asked, her eyes soft with nostalgia. "We were so poor, but we were happy, weren't we?" Femi remained guarded, giving non-committal answers, but the memories pricked at him. She was rewriting history, erasing the cheating and the cruelty, and focusing only on the good. It was a potent form of manipulation. He was no longer in love with her, but the ghost of the boy who had loved her was still inside him, and that boy was listening. As she stood to leave, she placed her hand briefly on his, a fleeting touch that lingered long after she was gone. "It was good to see you, Femi. The real you." He watched her walk away, his coffee suddenly cold, the foundations of his new life feeling just a little less stable than they had that morning. Amara knew something was wrong. Femi had become distant since the launch party, his reassurances feeling rehearsed. He was more guarded with his phone, a habit he'd never had before. Her intuition, a sense she had learned to trust in both her life and her work, told her that Nana's influence was growing, not receding. Waiting for Femi to handle it was no longer an option. She needed to understand the threat herself, face to face, on her own terms. She got Nana's address from a file Femi had left on his home office desk. One afternoon, without telling him, she drove to the quiet neighborhood. She parked her car down the street and watched as Nana returned from a market run, juggling bags of groceries while ushering her twins inside. She looked like any other mother, capable and busy. Amara took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked to the apartment door. Nana's shock when she opened the door was immediate, quickly masked by a cool composure. "Amara," she said, as if expecting her. "Please come in." The apartment was neat, clean, and smelled of spices. Amara stepped inside, her eyes taking in the humble but respectable life Femi had provided. The two women faced each other in the small living room, a silent battle of wills commencing. "I won't waste your time, Nana," Amara began, her voice calm and even. "I know you've been contacting Femi. I know you are trying to rekindle something that is long dead. I am here to ask you to stop." Nana let out a small, humorless laugh. "Rekindle? Femi and I have a history you could never understand. He loved me when he had nothing. That kind of bond doesn't just disappear because a new woman with a better bank account comes along." "He may have loved you," Amara countered, taking a step closer, "but you broke him. I was the one who helped him pick up the pieces. I was the one who sat with him through the nightmares and the trust issues you created. The love he has for me was built on the ruins you left behind. It's stronger than you can imagine." Nana's composure finally cracked. Her eyes flashed with anger and desperation. "You think you've won? You have his money, his house. But you will always know you were his second choice. He proposed to me first. He knelt for me. Every time he looks at you, a part of him will always remember the girl he truly wanted but couldn't afford." It was a cruel, expertly aimed blow, designed to hit Amara's deepest insecurity. For a moment, Amara felt the sting. But then she straightened her shoulders, her gaze unflinching. "He may have knelt for you then, when he was a boy who didn't know his own worth," Amara said, her voice dropping to a powerful whisper. "But he stands tall with me, as a king. You are a ghost from a past he has outgrown. Stay in the past, Nana. Because if you try to step into our future, you will find I am far more territorial than he is." Amara turned and walked out, leaving Nana standing in the middle of her living room, trembling not with victory, but with the chilling realization that she had profoundly underestimated the queen who now guarded the kingdom she had thrown away. The confrontation with Amara left Nana shaken. The image she had of Femi's fiancé as a soft, privileged woman was shattered, replaced by the reality of a fierce, intelligent protector. Nana realized that subtle tactics and nostalgic reminders would not be enough. Desperation began to curdle into something darker and more reckless within her. She felt her second chance, the one Femi had given her, slipping through her fingers. The comfortable apartment and the fledgling business no longer felt like a new beginning. They felt like a consolation prize, a cage with gilded bars. Her obsession with Femi intensified. She started driving by his estate, watching the gates open and close. She scrolled endlessly through Amara's social media, her heart twisting with a venomous envy at the pictures of them traveling, attending galas, and looking at architectural plans for their new home. She was living the life that was supposed to be hers. One evening, her mind clouded with resentment, she made a terrible mistake. She called an old friend, one of the few who had stuck by her after her fall from grace. Fueled by wine and self-pity, Nana vented her frustrations, embellishing the story. She spoke of Femi's lingering feelings for her, hinting that he was trapped in his new relationship and that he was still providing for her secretly. "He set me up in this apartment, gave me a huge amount of money. He still takes care of me," she slurred, the words designed to paint her as a cherished secret rather than a recipient of charity. She didn't know her friend was recording the conversation. 2 days later, the recording was leaked to a notorious gossip blog. The headline was explosive: Tech millionaire Femi Odibanjo secretly sponsoring homeless ex-girlfriend who brutally rejected him. Is his engagement a sham? The story went viral. The blog post included snippets of the recording, Nana's own words twisted into a narrative of a sordid love triangle. It rehashed the story of the mall proposal, contrasting it with Femi's current success. Suddenly, Femi wasn't just a successful entrepreneur, he was the subject of scandal. His investors called, concerned. His mentors were disappointed. The public narrative that had been one of inspiration was now tainted with whispers of infidelity and foolishness. Femi was blindsided. He was in a board meeting when his phone began buzzing incessantly. He saw the headline and his blood ran cold. He knew instantly that this was Nana's doing. This reckless, destructive act was a betrayal far deeper than any infidelity. She hadn't just disrespected him, she had attacked his reputation, his business, his entire life, and most unforgivably, she had publicly humiliated Amara. The magnanimous forgiveness he had held onto for so long evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. The boy on the bridge was gone forever, and the man in his place was about to show Nana the true meaning of consequences. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Femi's company stock took a minor dip. Amara was hounded by messages, her social media flooded with cruel comments from strangers dissecting her relationship. She faced it all with a public silence that spoke volumes, but in private, Femi saw the deep hurt in her eyes. "This is what she does," he told her, his voice grim. "She burns everything she can't have." Femi's response was swift and decisive. He did not engage with the gossip. Instead, he had his legal team issue a single powerful cease and desist letter to the blog, threatening a defamation lawsuit of a magnitude it couldn't survive. The article was taken down within hours. Next, he called a crisis PR team and scheduled a single, exclusive interview with a respected business journal. But his most important call was to Nana. When she answered, her voice was small and terrified. "Femi, I swear I didn't leak it. I was just talking to a friend." "I don't care how it got out, Nana." Femi's voice was devoid of all warmth, as cold and sharp as surgical steel. "You said the words. You created the lie. You took the new life I handed you and you used it as a weapon to attack mine. To attack Amara. I was hurting. I was confused," she sobbed. "I'm sorry." "Your sorrow is worthless to me now," he stated calmly. "The apartment I provided for you was on a 1-year lease. It will not be renewed. The business you started with my money is your own to manage. You are on your own. Do not ever contact me again. If you or anyone associated with you comes near me, my company or my fiancé, I will use the full extent of my resources to ensure you regret it. Is that clear?" The silence on the other end was filled with her choked sobs. He hung up without waiting for an answer. He felt no pity, no remorse. He had extended a hand in grace, and she had tried to pull him down into the mud with her. The line had been crossed, and mercy was no longer on the table. A few days later, his interview was published. He didn't mention Nana by name. He spoke of his past struggles as a catalyst for his success. When asked about the rumors, his answer was a masterstroke of controlled narrative. "My past is a part of my story, and I am not ashamed of it," he said. "I believe in second chances and in offering help to those in need, a principle I learned from my parents. But my future," he said, looking directly at the camera, "belongs entirely to my fiancée, Amara, the architect of my happiness and the co-builder of my life. Her integrity is beyond reproach, and I will not allow it to be questioned." The statement was a public declaration of loyalty, a final severing of his past. He had protected his kingdom, but the cost was the final, brutal extinguishing of the empathy he once held for the woman who had first broken his heart. A year passed. The scandal faded into the background noise of the internet, a forgotten footnote in Femi's success story. Naira chain became one of the most stable coins in the African market. Femi and Amara's new home, a breathtaking marvel of glass, wood, and light designed by Amara herself, was finally completed. Their wedding was an intimate, beautiful ceremony held in the gardens of their new estate, attended only by close family and true friends. Femi never heard from Nana again. He never looked for her. Through a mutual acquaintance, he heard that she had struggled after the lease on the apartment ran out. Her catering business had failed, not because the idea was bad, but because her heart hadn't been in it. Her focus had been on reclaiming a past, not building a future. The last he heard, she had moved with her twins to a different city, to live with a distant relative, humbled and anonymous once more. She had been given a lifeline and had mistaken it for a leash back to him. In severing it, he had forced her to finally float or sink on her own. One evening, Femi stood with Amara on the balcony of their bedroom, overlooking the city lights that twinkled like a fallen constellation. The air was cool, the silence peaceful. "Do you ever think about her?" Amara asked softly, her head resting on his shoulder. It was the first time she had mentioned Nana's name in months. Femi looked out at the sprawling, glittering city, the same city that had once tried to crush him. He thought of the desperate boy on the bridge, of the bitter man nursing a broken heart, and of the king in his mansion who had almost been tempted by a ghost. He had been all of them. "I don't think about her," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But I sometimes think about the boy who loved her. I'm grateful to him. His pain was the bedrock. His struggle was the foundation." He turned to Amara, his heart full of a profound, steady love that was as real and solid as the house she had designed. "But you, my love," he whispered, kissing her forehead, "you are the architect. You're the one who drew the blueprint for all of this. You built the home." They stood together, watching the endless stream of headlights on the roads below. Each light was a story, a journey, a series of choices and consequences. Femi's story was not one of revenge. It was a story of becoming. He had learned that true wealth wasn't about what you could buy, but what you couldn't afford to lose. He had learned that forgiveness was a gift you gave yourself, but reconciliation required a trust that, once shattered, could never truly be rebuilt. And he had learned that the greatest success was not in rising from the ashes, but in finally letting the wind carry them away for good.